I'm a taxi driver in Oslo, and 3 months ago I picked up an American tourist at the airport who spent the entire ride explaining why Norway was basically a prison. She'd been here 4 hours. Her evidence was that our grocery store closed at 8 p.m. She told me, with complete sincerity, that in America freedom means 24-hour access to groceries, and limiting that was government overreach. I tried explaining we value work-life balance, but she cut me off to inform me that Thomas Jefferson wrote about the inherent human right to midnight cereal shopping. I'm 90% sure he didn't, but she had the tone of someone citing constitutional law, so I just drove. She tipped me in dollars, which was somehow both generous and confusing since we use kroner here, and told me to use it to buy something before the stores close. The bills are still in my glove compartment because I'm too polite to explain currency exchange. My cousin manages a bookstore in Amsterdam, and last week an American couple came in looking for travel guide. When he told them the shop closes at 6 p.m. on Saturdays, the husband looked genuinely distressed and said that was un-American. Not un-Dutch, un-American, as if our business hours violated some international treaty. My cousin pointed out they were in the Netherlands, not America. The wife nodded sympathetically and said she understood how hard it must be living under those restrictions. She patted his hand like he was a refugee sharing his story. I work at a hotel reception in Lisbon. Last month an American guest asked if he could bring his own mini-fridge to his room because he didn't trust ours. When I explained we already provide one, he said American freedom means choosing your own appliances, and he'd brought a backup from home just in case European socialism had reached our refrigerators. He was completely serious. He showed me a photo of it in his checked luggage like it was a trophy. I told him Portuguese electrical outlets wouldn't fit his American plug. He said he'd brought an adapter because he always comes prepared when visiting restricted countries. I've lived here 40 years and never once felt restricted, but this man crossed an ocean with a mini-fridge because he was convinced our hotel fridges were somehow ideologically compromised. My brother works as a tour guide in Stockholm, and last summer he was leading a group through Gamla Stan when an American woman interrupted to ask why we don't have free speech in Sweden. My brother was confused because we absolutely do have free speech. She insisted we couldn't because she'd noticed people speaking quietly in restaurants and on trains. In her mind, if you're not allowed to be loud everywhere, you don't have real freedom. My brother tried to explain that speaking quietly in public spaces is just considered polite, not legally mandated. She looked at him with pity and said that's exactly what someone living under oppression would say. She pulled out her phone and started Googling Sweden censorship laws, right there in the middle of the square. She found an article about hate speech regulations, held it up triumphantly, and announced that proved her point. My brother gave up and just continued the tour while she live-tweeted about Swedish tyranny to her 47 followers. I'm a university administrator in Vienna, and we had an American exchange student file a formal complaint because we don't have campus police. She said it violated her constitutional right to armed protection on educational grounds. When I pointed out the Austrian constitution is different from the American one, and we don't actually have campus security issues requiring armed officers, she told me I'd been brainwashed by European collectivism. She'd read an article that said Americans have Second Amendment rights, and she assumed that meant everyone everywhere should have campus police with guns. She kept referencing the American founding fathers like they'd written Austria's laws. Eventually she demanded to speak to someone higher up, convinced I was part of some administrative cover-up. My supervisor had the same conversation with her. She transferred schools after 2 months because she felt unsafe in our weaponless campus environment, which has had 0 violent incidents in 40 years. My father runs a doctor's office in Brussels, and last month an American patient was shocked we don't charge her immediately after the appointment. She insisted on paying right then because in America freedom means immediate financial transactions. She seemed to think our system of billing through insurance later was some kind of trap. Dad explained that's just how Belgian healthcare works, that her travel insurance would cover it. She got agitated and said she didn't want to owe anyone anything because debt is un-American. She pulled out €200 cash and put it on the desk, demanding a receipt. Dad tried to explain he couldn't take cash payment for something that goes through insurance, but she refused to leave without paying something. She stood there for 20 minutes insisting that free healthcare meant she'd have to pay later with her freedom. Eventually Dad took €20 just to end the standoff, called it a consultation fee that doesn't exist, and wrote her a receipt on a prescription pad. She left satisfied that she'd maintained her financial independence. I manage a gym in Copenhagen, and we had an American member cancel his subscription because we don't allow people to work out in street shoes. He said restricting footwear was a violation of personal liberty. When I explained it's a hygiene rule that everyone follows, he told me that in America, he has the freedom to wear whatever shoes he wants, wherever he wants. He cited something about the pursuit of happiness, including footwear choices. I pointed out he'd signed a contract agreeing to the gym rules, including the no street shoes policy. He said he signed it under duress because he needed a gym and we had a monopoly on fitness in the area. We're one of 8 gyms within 2 kilometers. He told me this was exactly how tyranny starts, with small rules about shoes, and that he'd be writing about this on American expat forums to warn others. I checked, and he did. His post has 200 comments debating whether European gyms are violating human rights. I'm a restaurant manager in Lyon, and 3 weeks ago an American couple was outraged we don't do free refills on coffee. The husband called it communist. Not expensive, not unusual, but specifically communist. When I explained that unlimited coffee isn't standard in France, he told me it's a basic human right in America and wondered how French people survive without it. His wife suggested maybe that's why the French Revolution happened, because they'd never experienced true beverage freedom. I didn't have the energy to get into 18th century history, so I just offered to bring them more coffee for €2 per cup. He declined on principle, said he wouldn't support a system that charges for refills, and then left me a 30% tip anyway because not tipping would be un-American. The whole interaction lasted 15 minutes longer than necessary because he needed to explain the historical importance of free refills. My sister works at a cafe in Dublin, and last week an American asked why we don't have iced coffee ready-made in a fridge. She explained we make it fresh when someone orders it. He seemed baffled and said that in America, freedom means not waiting for your coffee. He suggested we were behind the times and didn't understand modern service. My sister pointed out the cafe opened in 1872, so we've actually been serving coffee longer than most American chains have existed. He said that just proved how stuck in the past we were. He ordered the iced coffee, waited the 4 minutes it took to make, and then complimented it extensively, saying it was way better than the pre-made stuff in America. He still didn't make the connection that waiting 4 minutes might be why it tasted better. Instead, he told my sister she should move to America where she could really thrive with her coffee skills. I work at a market stall in Porto, and yesterday an American tourist tried to return grapes after eating half of them. She said they weren't sweet enough and that in America, customer satisfaction means returning anything you're unhappy with. I explained that's not how fruit sales work here. You can taste a grape before buying to check if you like them, but you can't eat half a kilo and then decide you want your money back. She told me I clearly didn't understand American business principles and that Steve Jobs would be disappointed in my customer service. I'm not sure what the founder of Apple has to do with grape sales in Portugal, but she was very confident in the connection. She demanded to speak to my supervisor, who is me, so that went nowhere. Eventually she accepted that she'd bought and consumed the grapes, but she left me a 1-star review online saying Portuguese markets don't believe in consumer right. My nephew bartends in Prague, and last month an American was confused about why he wasn't being rushed out after finishing his beer. In America, apparently, servers are very attentive about moving people along, especially during busy times. Here, we let people sit as long as they want. That's just how Czech pub culture works. The American kept looking around nervously like he was doing something wrong by occupying the table. Finally, he asked my nephew when he needed to leave. My nephew said whenever he wanted to, there's no time limit. The American seemed suspicious, like this was a trick, and asked if the bill would increase the longer he stayed. My nephew explained it's just a fixed price per beer. The American sat there for another 2 hours, increasingly relaxed, and then told my nephew this was the most freedom he'd felt all trip because nobody was pressuring him to leave. He'd misunderstood American efficiency for freedom and European patience for restriction, then realized he had it backward. I'm a pharmacy assistant in Athens, and 2 weeks ago an American tourist was upset we wouldn't sell him antibiotics without a prescription. He said that in America, you have the freedom to make your own healthcare decisions. When I explained that antibiotics require prescriptions everywhere in Europe to prevent resistance, he told me that's exactly the kind of medical tyranny the American founding fathers warned about. I'm not sure which founding father predicted antibiotic resistance in the 1700s, but he seemed certain they had strong opinions on the matter. He said requiring prescriptions for medicine is the government controlling your body. I pointed out that American pharmacies also require prescriptions for antibiotic. He paused, then said those are different because Americans choose to get prescriptions, whereas here we're forced to. The logic didn't track, but he'd committed to it. He left without antibiotics and with deep concerns about Greek pharmaceutical oppression. I'm a train conductor in Switzerland, and last year an American passenger complained that our trains don't have enough freedom. I wasn't sure what that meant, so I asked him to clarify. He explained that American trains let you move freely between cars, but ours have doors you have to open manually. He felt oppressed by the door opening process. I told him the doors are there for safety and climate control, and opening them takes less than 2 seconds. He insisted that any barrier to movement, even a door, represents a restriction on liberty. He'd clearly thought about this deeply on his journey from Zurich to Lucerne. When we arrived at his stop, he stood in front of the door waiting for it to open automatically. I had to explain that you press the button. He said that proved his point about freedom and doors. My cousin manages a parking garage in Madrid, and she's constantly explaining to American tourists that they can't just park anywhere. Last week one man argued that parking restrictions are against the spirit of the open road. He'd driven a rental car into a pedestrian zone and was confused about why people were upset. When my cousin explained he'd need to move the car to the actual parking area, he said this never would have happened in America where parking is a fundamental right. She pointed out that pedestrian zones exist in America too. He said those are different because American pedestrian zones respect driver freedom. He couldn't explain what that meant, but he said it with enough conviction that my cousin just directed him to the parking area and moved on. He parked, walked back through the same pedestrian zone he'd driven through, and complimented how nice it was without cars. I work at a border crossing between France and Belgium, and the number of Americans who are shocked there's no checkpoint is remarkable. Last month one woman asked where she should get her passport stamped. I explained the Schengen area allows free movement between member countries, so there's no border control between France and Belgium. She looked concerned and said that seems dangerous. When I asked what exactly was dangerous about it, she said she wasn't sure, but America has borders between states and you always know which state you're in. I pointed out you can drive between American states without stopping to. She said that's different because it's all one country. I said the EU is similar in that sense. She said the EU isn't a real country though, so how do people know where they are? I suggested road signs, which we have plenty of. She took a photo of the non-existent border to show people back home. My brother-in-law teaches English in Helsinki, and he had an American student argue that Europeans don't have linguistic freedom because we learn multiple languages. Her logic was that being expected to speak more than one language is oppressive because it takes away time you could spend deepening your knowledge of English. She said Americans keep their freedom by staying monolingual and really mastering one language. My brother-in-law, who speaks Finnish, Swedish, English, and German, tried to explain that knowing multiple languages actually gives you more freedom because you can communicate with more people. She said that's just what multilingual people tell themselves to feel better about the extra work. She was taking his English class to improve her grammar, which she felt Americans had also kept free by not worrying too much about. She failed the course but told him it was a valuable experience in seeing how other cultures don't prioritize efficiency. I work at a public library in Warsaw, and last month an American visitor was shocked we charge late fees for overdue books. He said public libraries in America are moving away from fines because they're barriers to knowledge access. When I explained our fees are minimal and help maintain the system, he said that any fee is a restriction on intellectual freedom. He'd returned a book 3 weeks late and owed about €2. He refused to pay on principle, saying he was taking a stand against European information control. I told him he could just pay the €2 and borrow more books. He said that's not the point. The point was that Americans value free access to information, and charging late fees means Poland doesn't really believe in literacy. I mentioned that American libraries also have operating costs and many still charge fees. He said those are voluntary donations to support freedom, not mandatory fines to restrict it. The distinction he was making didn't exist, but he left without paying and without borrowing any new books, which seemed to restrict his information access more than the €2 fee would have. I'm a bookstore owner in Edinburgh, and last week an American spent an hour explaining to me that Europeans don't understand freedom because we've never had to fight for it the way Americans did. I'm Scottish. We've been fighting someone for independence every few centuries since the Romans showed up. When I mentioned this, she said that was different because Scotland is still part of the UK, so we didn't win. I didn't have the energy to get into the complexities of devolution and parliamentary systems, so I just recommended she read some Scottish history. She bought a book about Braveheart, which is at least historically adjacent, and told me she hoped one day Scotland would experience real freedom like America has. I thanked her, rang up her purchase, and closed the shop at 5:30 p.m. because it was Sunday and we close early on Sundays. She was still standing outside 10 minutes later, looking confused about where to go now that the shops were closed, which I suppose proves something about freedom and convenience, though I'm not sure what. My girlfriend works at a movie theater in Munich, and she had an American couple complain that assigned seating takes away the freedom to choose where you sit. When she explained that they literally chose their seats when they bought the tickets online, the husband said that's not the same as walking into the theater and picking any seat you want in the moment. He called it the difference between planned freedom and spontaneous freedom. She tried to clarify that assigned seating prevents conflicts and ensures everyone gets a spot, especially for popular films. The wife nodded but said that in America, they embrace the chaos of first come first served because freedom isn't supposed to be comfortable. My girlfriend pointed out that American theaters also use assigned seating now for most showings. They seemed genuinely surprised by this information, as if Germany had somehow influenced American cinema policy. They watched their movie in their assigned seats, which were excellent seats they'd selected themselves, and left satisfied but still theoretically opposed to the system.